When you edit your photos, how do you know how far to push those edits that you make? In my recent video, Why Your Landscape Photos Are Boring, I shared this picture as an example. One of the comments that I received said, "Final photo has been touched up so much it doesn't match reality anymore. Anyway, totally different sky for example. Lol." In this video, I want to pick up on that comment and dissect it a little bit and see if we can come up with any answers to how far is too far when we post-produce our pictures. I imagine it's going to be one that splits opinion, so please feel free to share yours with me in the comment section below. The first thing that I want to pick up on is the part of the comment where it says the photograph doesn't match reality anymore. I would argue that there's no photograph out there that truly matches reality. Why? Because I think we place so many filters between ourselves as the photographer and our subject for anything to appear truly real. When it comes to physical filters, we use different cameras with different colour profiles built into them. We use different lenses with different focal points and different options when it comes to depth of field. We might want to use physical filters themselves to deaden a sky or to bring a bit more movement and slow our shutter speed down. And then, of course, we've got our own personal filters. We might be colourblind, we might be long or short-sighted. And ultimately, we all have a different perspective of what real actually is. Take the recent European Football Championships as an example. Everybody in the stadium and watching at home on TV were watching exactly the same events unfold in front of their eyes. Yet, at the end of the game, half of those fans are absolutely ecstatic and the other half are absolutely devastated, even though they've watched exactly the same thing. Because everybody interprets the world that we witness ever so slightly differently to each other, then we can only have our own versions of reality. There isn't a set reality for absolutely everybody. Yes, I know that photographs are meant to represent reality, and they do because we see physical things in the frame that our eyes recognise and are not impressionistic or distorted in any way. But at the same time, our cameras can flatten perspectives, change colours, and ultimately distort what we see as being real. Take this famous photograph by Cartier Bron as another example. When we look at this picture, we see a real scene. It looks like it would do as if we were looking at it with our physical eyes. But yet, hang on a minute, it's in black and white. Our eyes don't see in black and white. And that figure in the foreground is floating in midair. That's physically impossible. The making of a photograph is fraught with subjective decisions that we as photographers have to make. Instead of seeing everything as real, we have to compartmentalise it, decide whether we're photographing it in colour or black and white, what our depth of field's going to be. All of these things our eyes don't necessarily compute in the real world. We have to think about when we're using a camera. This is where a really important element of photography comes in, and that is intent. Intent is what we intend our viewer to get out of the photograph that we make. Another famous photographer, Ansel Adams, came up with this term visualization, where he said he knew what his finished print was going to look like before he'd even clicked the shutter on the camera to take the picture. By twinning these ideas of visualization and our intent, we can create something that translates this reality that's happening in front of our eyes into a photograph that tells our viewer what we saw as our perspective of that reality. When it comes to editing our photographs, it ultimately comes down to our intent to dictate how far we push our edits, because ultimately it's that intent that's going to get our view across to the viewer looking at our picture. Let's rewind a little bit and go back to the photograph that inspired the comment that inspired this video. The photograph on the right is the finished photograph that I shared in the video. And the photograph on the left is that exact same photograph, but in RAW format. Now, RAW files are famous for flattening things down. So the sky looks a little bit overexposed. The contrast looks very flat indeed, and the colours aren't as punchy as I remembered them when I was looking at this scene physically in front of my eyes. When I edit my photos, I always centre my intent around the feeling that I had when I was out in the physical landscape making the picture. Like with Ansel Adams' visualisation, I try to channel that feeling into my edits that I make, to bring a bit of life and atmosphere back into the photograph that I remembered taking at the time. I must admit, I never like taking things out or swapping things over. Although the comment suggested that the sky was completely different, all I did was pull down the exposure and the shadows of the sky to create that more brooding look, which is what I remember seeing when I was actually out there photographing it. It's not a completely different sky altogether. And by increasing the contrast in the photograph, it also boosts that saturation, so the colours of the greens and the yellow of the buttercups stands out more and makes more of a statement in the shot. The truth of the matter is, whichever photograph you share, you're always going to get some people that say you've gone far too far, and others that say, well, I probably would have gone a little bit further. And that comes down to the fact that we all have our own interpretations of how photographs should look. I strongly believe that we should use our intent as our integrity. It's not necessarily how far you push your edits, it's how well they work in terms of getting your intent across to the viewer, so they can ultimately feel what you felt when you made the photograph in the first place. So with this photograph, I make no apologies for the edits that I made, because for me, the edits that I made make this photograph my version of reality and provide you with a window into that. If we all learn to be more accepting of other photographers' decisions, and maybe more inquisitive, trying to glean each photographer's intent from their photographs, rather than maligning them for doing something that we personally wouldn't have done, then I strongly believe that we'd get more out of this amazing, diverse world of photography. If we look at it like that, then when it comes to editing our photographs and asking the question, how far is too far, it sort of pales into insignificance. At the end of the day, photography is a creative medium, and as creators, we have our own license to do what we want with them. Remember, your intent is your integrity. There's always going to be some people that don't like your photographs, but if you stick to that maxim, there's always going to be plenty more that do. Whew, that was a deep one, wasn't it? If I haven't yet got you reaching for the aspirin to quell a headache, then why not watch this video next? And if you've enjoyed this content, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the Yorkshire Photo Walks YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, but until then, it's bye for now.